kidnapped?
I got kidnapped for that, yeah. I worked for 2 plumbers and they didn't realise what I was doing for probably a couple of months, which strikes me as strange that they didn't realise. But anyway, the night before my 18th birthday, I was with a friend of mine, won't say his name obviously, but and I got a phone call, and it was from another friend of ours who worked for the company, and he said, you need to come downstairs. And as I went down, those 2 were there, and they kept me captive for some time. And thankfully, obviously their insurance paid them back, but I obviously received yet another criminal conviction for that. But the period I was with them was scary, to say the least. I was still a child at that point.
Jason.
Hello.
Where are you from, mate? Where were you born?
I was born in London originally, in Middlesex, West Middlesex Hospital. Went over to live in Crystal Palace, and then grew up in Twickenham, which was southwest London.
How long were you in London for?
So London, about 16 years overall. I left when I was 16. I moved down to Dorset for many years, and now I've ended up in Portsmouth. So I've been about.
Yeah.
Been about.
What was school like for you growing up?
At the beginning, school was quite difficult. My home life was tricky, especially at an early age. My parents weren't particularly well, so going to school when I was young was difficult because I felt different to other people. Growing up, as I went into secondary school, I was quite fortunate. You know, I got sent to a private school, an all-boys school. It was good, but difficult. Didn't feel I fitted in. That was probably the hardest part of school.
Did you make any good mates there? Or?
I did make some good friends. Don't speak to anyone from school now, actually. Yeah, which is a shame. But it's just a consequence of the lifestyle I went on to lead. But definitely some people I hope to see again.
What did you excel in school? Anything in particular was your thing?
PE would be my main thing. I'm very sporty, love sport. And languages, any sort of language, I seem to take well to a language. But yeah, sport definitely was my thing.
When did things start to change for you? Look, can you remember what sort of age you were?
Yeah, so about 14, 15, I became curious. Like most teenagers, you know, you just start to step out a little bit into a different world. And so it all started with having a drink, and then it started with having a puff. And then by 15, I was taking ecstasy tablets and going out to parties. And 16, it definitely changed. I found a drug called cocaine, and things changed very quickly from that point.
So it was more of a curiosity thing at that stage?
Yeah. And it was a strange curiosity because my parents were both alcoholics, drug addicts. Yeah. So if anything, I had a tendency to not want to do what they did, but the curiosity sort of got the better of me.
Did you see their addictions in the home? It was obvious to you?
Yeah, so I only lived with them till I was 5. Right. I remember some stuff from very young, stuff that a 5-year-old shouldn't see. And so I was taken away at 5. I got taken into 4 different foster homes over 2 years, 2 of which were nice, 2 of which weren't. And then at 7, a judge gave an order, and I lived with my aunt until 16. So I was aware of what addiction can do. Even if I didn't know what addiction was, I knew some of the profound consequences it entailed. But thought, well, yeah, that won't happen to me.
Is the foster system quite lonely? I can imagine, like, if you're in a good home,
yeah,
it's manageable. But if you're in a bad one,
I think it's just lonely in general. Right. So the night I got taken, which is very vivid, that'll be etched in my mind forever. But the night I got taken, there were 2 police officers and a social worker. That's what I woke up to. It's about 2, 3 in the morning. And I was taken to the social services building, and then they find you somewhere to live. And so I got to this house in the middle of the night and was stuck in a bunk bed. I remember being on the top bunk, and I'm surrounded by other kids that I don't know. It's very lonely. At that point, you're like, well, what's happening now? You know, I've got to trust these people who are supposed to look after me. And 2 of them didn't. 2 of them were deeply unpleasant. So it is lonely, and I think that taught me, it taught me some bad habits, actually, in a sense, to not reach out and to just become solely reliant on me.
So as a teen, sort of 14, 15, 16, behaviour start to spiral as well?
Yeah.
What's that like for you?
I just became more rebellious in a way. And each time I took a drug, it did something to me. It changed how I felt. And so cocaine was the one in particular that gave me this feeling of numbness. And so I suppose the rebellious part of me was the part that wanted to pursue going and get it. Because obviously at that age, it's not, it's not cheap. So when you start going to any lengths to get it, you naturally change.
You able to say what you did? Any examples of what you had to do?
Yeah, I mean, there's countless examples. It started off with petty theft, so that would be from family members, unfortunately, then friends, then it evolved to fraud. Back in those days, it was cheques, so I started committing quite major cheque fraud for thousands and thousands of pounds. That included against my own family members. So from very early on, by 17, I was put into Feltham Young Offenders Prison as a result of that behaviour. I knew the things I was doing was wrong, but I didn't have an answer because the lure of the drug was stronger.
And even stronger than family bonds and ties, it just overtakes, doesn't it?
All of that. So my moral compass, I don't think actually ever left. I knew the things I was doing were wrong, but whether I acted on that was another matter, and 99% of the time I chose the drug.
Our generation knows what checks are, but
Yeah.
Nowadays kids ain't got a clue.
No.
I mean, without too many details, how does check fraud work?
So one day, it was actually from a family member. I came to this realisation that there were two types of checks. There was a personal check and there was a business check. And a business check I could write to myself and I could go and cash that in a check cashing shop. And so that started with my family members, then it was people that I worked for. If they had a business check, I would write myself checks and they would get cashed, and that had some quite profound consequences for me. One of them in particular was a company I worked for. I actually got kidnapped for that. That's another story.
You got kidnapped?
I got kidnapped for that, yeah. I worked for two plumbers and they didn't realise what I was doing for probably a couple of months. Which strikes me as strange that they didn't realise. But anyway, the night before my 18th birthday, I was with a friend of mine, I won't say his name obviously, but and I got a phone call, and it was from another friend of ours who worked for the company, and he said, "You need to come downstairs." And as I went down, those two were there, and they kept me captive for some time, and thankfully, obviously their insurance paid them back, but I obviously received yet another criminal conviction for that. But the period I was with them was scary, to say the least. I was still a child at that point.
So it's quite a dark world you start to enter into.
Dark world.
What age were you at the Young Offenders?
17. Yeah, 17. I wasn't there for an overly long time. Back in those days, I think fraud was treated less seriously than it would be now. But it was long enough to teach me I didn't want to go back there. However, I've been profoundly lucky not to go back to prison. That's been more luck than judgment.
Quite a hostile space.
Feltham was very hostile, yeah. I remember coming round there. So I'd been taking something else called Valium, which is a tablet, and when you take that for extended periods of time, you get like withdrawal symptoms. So I came around in this cell, and I'm withdrawing, I'm sweating and I'm shaking, and you hear the noise. There's a noise, and if anyone's been to prison, they'll know that noise, but it's intimidating and it's scary, and well, it's the unknown, isn't it? It's the fear of the unknown. You don't know what to expect. I just kept my head down in there and got on with it.
So sort of early 20s, what was life like for you? I mean, did you have moments where you were able to control things and get work done, or was it just rampant drug abuse?
By 21, I went to rehab for the first time, a residential rehab where you stay there. That was in Bognor Regis. And I stayed clean for 2 years. I know now, with the benefit of hindsight, that all I did was stay clean. So nothing actually changed in me. So it was inevitable at some point I was gonna pick up again. But yeah, I had 2 years, not one drop of alcohol, not one line, nothing. Got a good job, well-paid job, had a girlfriend, all the trimmings of what you would call a good life, to all intents and purposes. And the company I worked for, they ran a competition, and you won a cruise at the end of it. I won that competition, and as we got off, we were getting on the boat at Malaga, and I thought, I'm going to have a beer. I'll just have a beer because I'm going to be on the ocean for a week. Can't hurt, and that lasted nearly a decade.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've heard that said before in rehab that you literally can't go back to one. Like,
Nah.
For people that are wrestling with addiction.
Yep.
That's it. That's enough.
Yeah, that possibility for me doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I've proved that countless times.
Yeah.
I've tried to get clean and relapsed on multiple occasions, and it gets worse each time. That's the scary thing. It gets worse, and it gets more seedy and insidious and dark. So actually, as time went on, those early consequences of prison and whatever else, they were actually quite light in the grand scheme of things. It was what started happening here, and in here, that's where things went really wrong.
So let's explore that a little bit,
Yeah.
however much you want to. I mean, how did this impact your mental health and your life or your soul, if you like, at the deepest
Yeah.
place? What did that look like?
So eventually I went from snorting cocaine to smoking crack cocaine, and I became psychotic.
Is it a bigger hit, is it, then, or is it delivered differently?
Bit of both,
Right.
really. It's delivered differently, but it's intense. It's very, very intense. But that intenseness for me, after a long time of using cocaine, sniffing it, that became paranoia for me very quickly, and that paranoia turned to psychosis, which is where you can't differentiate what's real from what's not. So it was like full-blown hallucinating. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And you tell that to a normal person, they think, well, you just don't do the drug again. It's like, yeah, that works in principle, but my method was, well, if I do it again, the psychosis will go. That's how the illusion of the drug works. I'd convince myself that it makes me feel better, so I must take it.
Did you lose whole weeks in that place, did you?
Weeks. Yeah. And as time went on, I've always been quite good at getting a pound note, which has actually been detrimental for me, but the more money I had, I would go till that money was gone. And I do mean go till it was gone. And I don't say that for any effect.
Yeah.
I say that as desperation. I was just I lived to use and used to live.
What was your lowest point?
My lowest point was actually when it all changed, which was the 29th of December, 2023. That's the last day I used a drug. Last day I had a drink, and that day, I speak about this day many times, but it's a powerful day. As I came to, this feeling of, I didn't want to die. I know that. I did want to live. But the feeling of, well, I haven't really got anything left now. I didn't have any friends left, no family left. I was in a one-bedroom flat in complete darkness. There was no electricity, no gas, no money, no excuses, no one to blame. So this thought started to emerge in me that if I cut my throat, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, I'll be in pain. And I thought, it could all be over in 2 minutes' time. And that feeling just started to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And I became more invested in it. So I think what I'm trying to say is my darkest moment was when I realised that although my physical health had been bad with my heart, although my mental health had been bad, my spiritual health, whatever you want to call it, the health of my soul, whatever makes you get up and try and have a go at life, that was in real trouble. And that was almost extinct. And so death seemed like the only tangible option I felt I had left, even though I didn't want it. I didn't have a clue how to live. I had no tools to live.
Before we explore the change and the rescue, if you like, have you been able to identify why? Like the curiosity, but were there places in you that were hurting, broken?
Yeah.
What was the pursuit?
I think the pursuit was, obviously I had some trauma from my younger years. I think it's like, I don't think addiction is that abnormal in some ways. I think everyone in the world at some point wants to escape the difficulties of life. And some people just pursue that further. I think the problem with my upbringing was I didn't have any emotional maturity. So when things presented themselves to me, I had no way of actually dealing with them. And so when I first took the drug, and it seemed to deal with them, 1 + 1 is 2.
Yeah.
I thought, well, if I take the drug, I feel better.
Mm.
But I had a distinct emotional immaturity. Yeah.
Yeah, that's deep. That's helpful. So, what changed? Like, this wasn't an overnight thing, I guess. It's been a journey for you. But what were some of those early steps from that darkest hour to where you are today?
The change in itself was profound. The journey, obviously, I'll go into in a sec. But within all that darkness, there was something going on that I couldn't explain, which was weird. But there was just like a voice, I think it was a voice, that said, if you just do the next right thing, this can all be different. But you have to surrender. Then that was the key. I had to surrender and have an acceptance that my way didn't work. And so the next right thing for me was I needed medical attention, especially for my mind. So I went to a psychiatric hospital. That's where my recovery began. And that's exactly where I needed to be, because I just didn't have this. I couldn't have a conversation with people. That possibility didn't exist to me. I was wild mentally. But in there, this belief started to grow that actually I could be someone different. Like Jason could be. There's a version of me that exists that isn't a thief, isn't a liar, isn't a drug addict, that actually is loving and caring and can succeed. And I was curious. I was curious about that, and I thought, yeah, I want to investigate that. And that's been the journey. That's been the journey, is investigating that curiosity and believing that I can go and achieve it. Yeah.
That's really powerful, mate. I've heard someone say recently in another interview, he talked about, for men, broken men, that in part the church can give you a family that you can love and care for and be plugged into. And outside of religion, I guess, you've encountered a faith and it's real for you. And how did that come about? Were you always a Christian?
So I was brought up in a household with my aunt and uncle that I did go to Sunday schools. So I've always had the knowing of who Jesus was. I can't say I particularly followed him. My lifestyle will probably show that. What was interesting is that when I was in the hospital, I knew I needed to be in a church. Now, I can't tell you why I knew that. I just knew. I knew the next place I needed to go was a church. And I came to Goshen Baptist Church. And I smiled when you mentioned family, because the idea of God, of Jesus, was so far out of my comprehension at that point that, yeah, I just needed to be nurtured. I needed to be loved. And when I walked through those doors, a friend of mine who I'd actually met in Feltham, she was part of a chaplaincy scheme, still friends to this day. She said to me, the greeting will tell you a lot about the church. And when I came in, people were really warm. And I was broken, man. I'd just come out of psychiatric hospital, so I was not very well. And they just embraced me. And yeah, at my church, I do have a whole new family. And I genuinely operate like that. You know, I'm their family and they're mine. And that can be quite difficult, because it's quite overwhelming when you experience that sort of love, because that's something that's quite new to me. The church is an extraordinary place. And what that did was it allowed, because God was so far out of my comprehension, I don't believe it was any mistake that I ended up in a church. You know, for me, God knew the next step was that I needed to see his people, because those were the people who were going to present him to me. And that's exactly what they've done. Exactly what they've done. And I've walked to places I wouldn't dream I could have ever got to. That curiosity, yeah. And it's amazing. Once it starts to be fulfilled and you start to see the stuff that the church says or the Bible says, when it starts happening, it's like, okay, this is strange. This is strange, but a good strange, yeah. My life's completely different today.
It's very encouraging, mate. And I think what's powerful is that not everything, I guess, gets fixed overnight. Like, still wrestle to pay the bills, still struggle to keep yourself afloat sometimes mentally. And, you know, the battles are still real, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I mean, how are you finding that? You just keep going, keep talking to people. What do you do to support and help your life with this new family you've got?
biggest part for me has been self-awareness. So I think God encouraged me very early to get honest and to go inside, basically, to not look at anything out here to fix me, but with the support of the church and him, to start getting real with what was going on inside me, and to go to places I didn't particularly want to go to, talk about things I didn't particularly want to talk about. To me, it's been, I call it the inside job. That's where the gold, that's where the treasure is. That's where the treasure is. And what that does is it means that, yeah, the world is still the world. I still face tons of difficulty, tons of trial, but within that, I have a strength and a peace that is very difficult to understand. I try not to understand it. I try to just embrace it and just allow it. The more I try and understand it, you know, the more it boggles my mind. Life is life. We live in a difficult world. I think what my addiction taught me is that you just can't run. There's only so long you can run. And what God's taught me is you don't need to run. You know what I mean? Just face it up. And there's more inside. Well, through going inwards, I've learned I've got more in me than I realised. And actually, the more I live in that, the more I know I'll never take a drug again, if I stay in that.
What would you say, mate, just in closing, to a guy perhaps who's watching this, who's in that place where you've been, that sense that maybe of abandonment, of escapism, of losing themselves to whatever path? It might have been drugs, it might have been other things, but they're at that moment of, I can't see a value of going on with this. What would you say to that guy?
That's a real tough question. I would say, number one, as I just said, seek help. And I'm not saying that in a biblical sense at first. If you need medical help, get medical help. Start that process of looking after yourself. Take risks, and what I mean by that is trust people. And start to believe in a different version of yourself, because it does exist. But be prepared, because it's not easy work. There's only so long you can keep running until eventually, you know, you hit a brick wall. There's a whole new version of whoever I'm talking to here waiting for them. But have we got the faith to go and get it? And I'll stand here and testify that although you can't prove the existence of God, I can't prove any of it, through putting my faith in God's people and the Bible, some strange things have happened. They have. And it starts to open up a different world. So go to a church, be honest with people, and just take one day at a time. Don't think about the future. It gets too overwhelming. Just take one day at a time. Anyone can fight the battles of just one day. Yeah.
Thank you, mate.
That's all right.